friends till the end. We're all just friends, and everything must come to an end. And so, the good news is that this is just beginning. And by this I mean Nick Flanagan Weekly, your kind of weekly show that's a podcast featuring a guy who is me. Who is me? Your weekly podcast featuring a guy who is me. Welcome to Nick Flanagan Weekly. I am the Nick Flanagan of the title. And we're here. I'm here. I'm here at my spot where I record, which is also currently a spot where I sleep. Maybe one day I'll have one of these fancy studios. You know, I'll have a pod empire. And I'll have one of these podcast networks, of all the celebrities will be on it. Bruno Garussi, David Caruso, Dennis Franz, Jimmy Smits, Ricky Schroeder, and the creator of NYPD Blue, Mr. Stephen Bochco. Everybody. I'll have a podcast network that features everybody from the television show NYPD Blue. NYPD Blue. A2 PD Blue. This is a podcast, in case you haven't listened before. If you have listened before, thank you. But if you haven't, here's the deal. It's me. I'm me. What can I tell you? I've done a bunch of things. I'm old. You do things by the time you're old. And then I put those things sort of together. Then I went, Then all the problems started. And I've just been sort of freaking out ever since, and I decided to start a podcast. So you're catching me in about year 10 of the freak out. Bi-coastal. Once upon a time, I was born in the great city of Toronto. I decided, well, education, schmeducation. Give me the streets. Started doing comedy and music all around. Found myself more often than not in Los Angeles, California. And I adhered to this thing in my brain where in like 2005 even 2004, the word on the street about New York City was it was impossibly expensive. So I was just always in my head thinking, this is going to be too hard if I'm there. And you do really need hustles if you're in New York. So I always thought maybe I should live in LA. Plus I'm from Canada, so it's cold. New York, less cold, still cold. LA, not cold, fires, potential earthquake, still. And then I wound up having a bunch of friends who moved there from New York, so I moved to LA. What do you know? There I am on a visa. Trump wins 2016. I was there witnessing the run-up. My friends saying, I really think Hillary I gotta go with Hillary. It'll be nice to have a lady. I'm like, yeah, I'm not voting. But compared to the other thing, probably better. Nobody bought it. I had a show the day of Trump's victory in New York. In LA. And he won. He was in New York when he won. But the show was in LA, where I lived at the time. And everybody was so sad. Everybody was so sad. The show was not happening. It really quickly went off the rails as soon as those results started coming in. Because LA's 3 hours behind, right? In more ways than one, am I right, LA? You and your hats. Always with the weird hats that aren't fashionable anymore. Enough about that. By the time this show starts at like 9, results are trickling in and they're not looking good. Everyone's getting upset. Suddenly, it's even worse. And he wins. And nobody wanted to keep doing the show. A couple of comedians, James Fritz, Byron Bowers, got up, tried to say some stuff. Both great comics. Byron Bowers, have you seen him? Man, I used to always be so happy when Byron Bowers was doing shows and I was around. Because he was really on a tear, like 2016 to 2018 in Los Angeles, California. I also went to a birthday party once, and I didn't know him, but I met him there at this birthday party, and it was right after whatever yet another terrible racially related death of a guy and a cop being involved. I remember we had a really nice talk. And I always had a good vibe about him. And I mean, look, he answered my Facebook messages afterwards. So hopefully it wasn't the world's worst talk. You know, you don't want to be that guy. Thinks you had a good talk with someone at a party, they never want to see you again. I have been that guy. But, you know, if you never want to see me again, you're missing out. That's all I have to say. I am worth seeing again. Let me just get to my weekend. Might as well talk about my weekend and I'll go backwards. Starting with yesterday, being Sunday. Oof. It was a weird weekend. It was like the weekend before Halloween, you know? But for some reason, even though Halloween does technically fall on a weekend, Friday, maybe it's everybody wants a full day of it's not a work day to count as Halloween. So this past Friday and this past Saturday, everybody was acting like that was Halloween day. And that strange, too early Halloween feeling permeated the entire weekend. Yesterday, I agreed, ages ago, a comedian friend said, I'm hosting a show. It's at a pub. You want to do it? Yeah, sure. So, comedy in Toronto has been happening randomly at pubs and bars for the last, let's say, 30 odd years, you know, probably closer to 40. And when I started doing them, they used to be the only option. There weren't that many comedy-driven theaters or places for stand-ups to perform. So you'd go to some bar, they'd surprise, you know, nobody would know there'd be comedy, and then a guy would get up and say, there's comedy, and then the crowd would be like whoever was already at the bar. This was a little better than that, because Mark DeBonis, who normally runs the show, is great, very funny comic, and it's on the third floor of a pub, so people have to want to come to the third floor to see the comedy. That's already better. I have a joke about all this type of pub comedy on, I think, my second album, Wiped Privilege. Anyway, the bar is like one of these fake English pubs that, again, Toronto and probably Ontario really loves. There's pictures of the Rolling Stones, the framed picture of Wallace and Gromit, televisions everywhere. televisions right next to where we're performing. That's fine. All the comics, solid, no big deal. It's in the middle of Yonge Street, which is like city center, basically, downtown. There's construction everywhere. I haven't been there. There's no reason for me to be there. I don't live anywhere near there. There's not a lot I want to do over there most of the time. It makes me think of Christmas shopping, which is fun. And when I was a teenager, man, did I like hanging out over there. And, you know, there are lots of things to do around there, but I don't do much. And at this point, going all the way out there to do something feels mad. So this was like a field trip. I was going to find out what everything was like. I passed by the Eaton Centre, and this Dundas and Yonge area of Toronto, man, it always was trying to be this Times Square-esque experience, and they've really ramped it up. They really got the biggest billboard video screen I've maybe ever seen, and it's towering above everybody, and it sucks. But it's, as the kids say, it's a Temu or Wish version of Times Square. The Eaton Centre has these, you know, chain stores I've never heard of. Simon's, there's a huge department store called Simon's. It's apparently Quebecois. I don't know it. You know what? Get better PR, Simon's, because I never heard of you. And then you are at the Eaton Centre. It feels awkward. You feel like an industry plant. Can franchises be industry plants? It kind of feels that way, right? Toronto also has this deal where, like, we're like dudes. Where, I don't know, a bunch of people decide there's going to be one type of specific franchise or one type of new business style, and they just go all out on it. For a while, it was this store, Popeyes. Tons and tons of Popeyes were popping up everywhere. A&W was another one. A&W's, every which way. Now it's, you know, I've seen a lot of Turkish bakeries. And donors. I don't know. Now there's all these new ones of that. I don't care. And this is the kind of thing peppering Yonge Street nowadays. And all of these people and cars honking. And this square, it used to be called Dundas Square. They changed the name to Sankofa Square. Because Lord Dundas, who the street Dundas is named after, I think he voted against abolition of slavery at some point. In the 1800s. Now, of course, why are places named after all these British lords? It's just a lame thing about Canada. They wanted to change the whole street name. Dundas. They wanted to move on. And I think they voted to change it, but it would be very expensive. And the city is got a lot of problems otherwise. So I think that renaming the street thing is on break. But they renamed Dundas Square. And it's called Sankofa Square now. Sankofa is a Ghanaian greeting. I think it means welcome. Something very simple. But, you know, those super sensitive people who are like, don't change our beautiful heritage of a guy named Dundas, who happened to be a British lord, so name a bunch of stuff after him. Yeah. These people were offended that name is now gone in the brilliant history of Dundas, which is not taken away, but somehow the fact that this square is no longer called it Dundas Square. Now it's Sankofa Square. But they're mad. They're trying to say because Ghana was part of the slave trade in Africa, that means it's as bad as this guy who voted against abolition. But it's more like if they just called this if they'd called the square Welcome Square, and a bunch of people were like, well, that's an English word. The English did slavery. That's your argument. This is the type of strangeness people come at us with. So it means welcome. It's called Sankofa Square. Get used to it. Don't go there, though. It's not good. It's buskers. Street performers. Worst of all, influencers. No, you don't want to be anywhere near there. In fact, if they wanted to call it, they should have given a nicer thing a Sankofa, name. Call it, this sounds nice, right? Sankofa Station. Welcome Station. That's good. Wow. So I did comedy at an English pub. And I don't know. It was a bowl of hot water thrown right in cold water thrown right in my face. Do that. If you're still listening to this podcast, you've given in to some extent. Oh, this guy's gonna maybe say things I don't fully know where he's coming from. I think I know what he means. Some of you might get the whole thing. I don't know. And I'm not saying I'm operating on some crazy plane. I'm saying sometimes I forget to, say the bridging word. Explain why I went from one subject to another subject. Last night, that crowd was just giving me stares. They didn't boo. They didn't actively say anything weird. I saw smiles. I saw then reluctance. Part of this is because I feel, I get really in my head and I get really locally brained being from this stupid town of Toronto. I start thinking how annoyed I am by just how people are here and what humans and crowds respond to here, because it feels very, for lack of a better word, simple and basic at times, which is why you'll see such weird Canadian entertainment exports or examples of entertainment stuff. The truth is, it's our own self-consciousness about this that perpetuates this being the way it is. But at the same time, Canadians are fucking basic. I don't know. It's a byproduct of everyone in Toronto being from a bunch of different places, too. It's like, if you're going to all come together to be entertained, it probably won't be for very niche topics. And there's nowhere more diverse than young and the middle of the city. And boy, do I love that about Toronto. How people are from so many different places. And yet, makes my comedy not work. Explain that. That was my night yesterday. And it was such a hassle getting all the way over there. A hassle getting back, and I got sad. This is why I don't do too many of these grinding kind of shows. It's because my brain, having done so many of these shows in the past, my brain has maxed out on being able to withstand it to some extent. And I don't mean it's the hardest thing in the world. I just mean the whole thing. Schlepping yourself there, waiting, watching everybody, having your shit together. Oof. I don't want it. Daddy don't want it. Daddy doesn't want it. Daddy does not want it. Would Daddy want it? Not this Daddy. He doesn't want it. Hashtag Daddy doesn't want it. That might be my new comedy catchphrase. What do you think? Sorry, Daddy doesn't want it. Ooh, Canadian. Sorry, Daddy doesn't want it. Still working on it. Saturday was a big day. The people I like to work with and for, not dead yet, helping out with their concerts. Big rock and roll, punk, experimental music, alternative jams, all kind of stuff. They're a promoter. They had a big hardcore, 2-day hardcore fest called Town of Hardcore. I went to the Saturday show. The headliners on the Friday were a band called Gorilla Biscuits. Some tough guy stuff. The Saturday, and then a band called Speed, all the way from Australia. Newer hardcore. And the Saturday was a band called Cold World, who were from Detroit and had this like weird, like 2009, I want to say, maybe even earlier. Like they've been around for a while. And it's like a sort of tough hip hop edged, like gang hardcore kind of thing. These are worlds I'm not 100% in. I was more in the thing where it's like you get like crusty punks who love Kiss and fans of garage rock, fans of 80s hardcore. Even there's some straight edge punk rock that is kind of the stuff that is like not as pop centric as Operation Ivy, Bad Religion, even the Descendants, but it is really into a Ramones-y take on rebellious subject matter. That was like the kind of world I was in, whereas this stuff is more like, it's tough guy shit. Especially Gorilla Biscuits. But it's because it's straight edge, you know. Straight edge punk is a whole other thing. But anyway, on Saturday I went and I checked out my friend's band, Pluto's Kiss. They were excellent. And the crowd was so good. And, you know, the scene, the hardcore scene in Toronto, it has a lot of... It's diverse in terms of gender. It's diverse in terms of culture and race. And that makes... It's kind of like a spin on a genre I felt less connected to, which is this sort of tough, you know, hardcore, almost suburban. The thing is, I feel like it's a very kind of suburban style that comes out of like running the streets at night and throwing paint on a wall, just emptying a bucket of paint on a wall, having a decal of your gang. But putting it on the wall, on the paint, you just, you know, tracing, doing graffiti, suburban, in suburbia. But, you know, now I relate to it more because it just, I don't know, it just feels more broad in a good way, and just in terms of the people doing it. And, like, seeing that reflect at me. Seeing all the years and years of different influences that lead to where it is now is also really interesting. I like to think about it, to compare it to maybe like that musician Lil Peep, who almost as soon as I heard him, which was right after he died, I was like, I really like this. But musically, it's sort of Linkin Park meets... not Insane Clown Posse, but like a certain type of rap that's like Insane Clown Posse, but also, you know, southern rap and trap and drill and ba, all these great genres. So it was almost like seeing what this stuff I didn't like, how it affected certain musicians, made me appreciate those older musicians more. You know, so now I have an appreciation. I'll listen to them, but I have an appreciation for Linkin Park. And you can quote me on that. Then I worked the after show, helped do door for basically a midnight show. This hardcore band, metal, they're actually super metal, called Eternal Champion. It was like a metal show and all these drunk metal people. Saw lots of friends there, but man, I was ready to go. I don't want to be. You ever do door at a metal show? All these people are coming in. Hey man, whoa, what's up? How's it going? This is where the tickets are, dude. I don't know. Just let me scan in your fucking QR code. I don't need all this personality. Save the personality for inside the venue. Right? Friday, I was maybe going to see Gorilla Biscuits. I invited my friend over to see him. John, who I used to be in the band Brutal Nights with. And John said, Nick, I don't think I want to go to that, but you want to meet up anyway. So I met up with John and Alyssa, my wonderful friend from high school. And we went to Katie, who was also in my band Brutal Nights. She owns a bar called Thirsty and Miserable on Dundas Street West. And we met there for a drink. I had about 1.5 drinks. That was all I needed. Some have said it's more than I needed. And we talked about various subjects. And it was great. And it's good hanging around other people from my old band. And I've been trying to tell this joke that nobody has laughed at yet. So it's not, I can't really count it as a joke. But it's more of a thought. So maybe this is a good place to say it. Because last weekend I did this comedy and music show. Where there were comedians and these punk bands. It was so fun. At a place called Low Bar. But I was talking about you have comedians. Comedians are the one group that's sleazier than musicians. Now look, no one's more depraved than musicians. We can just put that out there. Musicians do the most depraved shit. But comedians are weird, A lot of time they're sober. And they're all alone in the world, navigating it, trying to pick people up. And, and they do a less intoxicating art form. Especially after the fact, Comedy, I've found, it takes a very specific mind to be really focused in on someone who just performed comedy and go I want to hang out with you. Music is completely intoxicating. Music, you're in love with the person when you hear the record. You're in love, not in person, but you're in love with the act. You see them live. Hopefully it meets your expectations. Afterwards, you're still high from it. And then the musician is often caught up in it, so they're still high from it. So then everyone's convincing each other to do horrible, fucked things. Comedians, stone cold sober, creepy decision making. I know I'm not being 100% clear, but this is starting to make sense. You know what I mean? I don't know. We gotta cull the amount of comics out there in the world. And don't make me be one of the ones who retires. Because I'm still having some fun when I do it sometimes. But also, as a comic, it's hard to see someone who's quit comedy and then they're thriving in some other business, and meanwhile you're still eating your shoe as a comedian. That's not fun either. Boiling your shoe, eating it with a knife and fork. That's not fun either. There have been many people who I was oh, look at that poor soul up there. They're not good at comedy. And then you find out they're the CEO of Manulife. So they don't really need to worry about it. And that was my weekend. What did you think? I put the question to the good people of Instagram. Hey, what should I talk about on my podcast? I really got one major question, so I'll just read that one out, and I'll try to deal with it, and I'll get the hell out of here. Claire asks, when did you get up? Oh, wait, no, they said, are you up? When do you get up? So, today I got up pretty late. I don't want to say how late, but too late. And that felt really horrible for 2 hours afterwards, maybe longer. Terrible. What a way to start the week. So that's why it's like 9:30 p.m. and here I am trying to do some stuff. I could be up anywhere from 10:30 to, I don't know, later, much later. And I'm trying to figure out how to make it better. How to get out of this sleeping conundrum. I'm taking my ADHD meds every other day. I'm not taking them every day. I know I should probably limit my screen time. And I'm trying to do that. I know I should turn screens off an hour before I go to bed. All that stuff. But I keep on finding myself being like, oh, it's super late. Better go to bed. And then I go to bed and I'm just lying there for a while and then I fall asleep and then I get up late. This is just a constant cycle. If you go through this cycle, you can tell me what you've done to cope with it or what you're doing to cope with it. You can write me at weaklypodcast@gmail.com. WEAKLY podcast@gmail.com. You can support the podcast by going to www.ko-fi.com/Nick Flanagan, ko-fi.com/Nick Flanagan for a one-time kind of throw me some cash, or join me on Patreon, where I'm Nick Flanagan on Patreon. And then there's nothing too special currently on Patreon. Hopefully I can figure that out, but I will put this podcast out and you'll be helping fund that. And that's nice. And hope you have a great week. Let me know how your week was. I'll talk to you later. All the best from me, Nicholas.